Senator Perdue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the witnesses for your time today. Obviously, this is we've had similar conversations where we're trying to balance privacy and enforcement. It's ongoing. I applaud your efforts and your leadership in that. I look forward to debating both ECPA and the LEADS Act, and I want to applaud the ranking member and Senator Lee for their hard work on these bills. Ms. Trangiel, I have a quick question related to LEADS. As we know, and I think you've just explained, LEADS would create a rule that government may use ECPA warrants to obtain content data stored outside the U.S., but only if the account holder is a U.S. person. In all of the cases involving content data stored abroad, it would require the government to utilize the MLAT process, as I understand it. I know that DOJ has concerns about the LEADS Act. What's your view on the provisions of the bill that seek to improve and streamline the MLAT process?
Thank you for that question. Improving the MLAT process on an incoming basis, which is what that proposal is talking about, is difficult and complicated, and we very much look forward to working with the committee on that. We do think it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of solution, and having provisions that apply, for instance, to require sort of online intake when not all countries actually use government email to send in their requests is the sort of thing that makes this hard. And so we very much look forward to working with you to address those issues.
Can you explain the DOJ's concerns that I think DOJ has expressed regarding the effect of the LEADS Act on domestic investigations, particularly those involving a non-citizen who's physically in the U.S.?
Thank you. The department would be concerned with any proposal that would unilaterally take away a tool that we have in order to be able to obtain information about a U.S. crime affecting U.S. victims that historically has been in place for a long time, and replace it with something that would take a really long time through international cooperation alone. And it would, proposals that would also make it more difficult to get information about non-U.S. persons committing crimes in the U.S. than it would U.S. persons is also a concern for us.
I see. Mr. Kresge and Mr. Salzberg, one last quick question. I want to go into the subpoena issue that was raised just a minute ago about your agency's ability to enforce subpoenas directly on the target of a civil enforcement action. I ask that particularly because of the federal court decisions holding that an individual can be required to comply with a subpoena to produce content data that's being maintained by a service provider. Can you give me your views, and let's clarify that just a little bit further, if you don't mind, Mr. Kresge?
Sure. Well, our subpoenas are not self-executing. So in other words, we need to, if somebody objects to our subpoena, we need to go to court and obtain a court order compelling production of the materials. That person in that proceeding can raise whatever objections they have, whether it be privilege or other relevancy objections or the like. And the case law essentially says that if we show a proper purpose and if the subpoena is properly tailored, that it will be upheld. And so in those circumstances, we can obtain the email from the subscriber. But the problem, obviously, as we've been talking about, is the subscriber will often not provide you with full email because they're incentivized not to. And if they know we can't obtain the email through the ISP, that further incentivizes them not to provide us with full of email.
What's your actual experience there of targets who actually do provide that information versus the ones you have to go get the warrant?
When we have to get the warrant, or when we have to?
Well, when you have to go to the second step of actually trying to get the information.
Yeah. Well, we have frequently brought subpoena enforcement actions. Obviously, in many cases, we make a judgment. There are resource constraints about bringing subpoena enforcement actions, and obviously we make a judgment about whether to compel in a particular case. I will say that our experience is that in certain cases, subscribers provide full emails, and others they don't. And that becomes clear because as you subpoena others who are involved in the misconduct, you sometimes find that the other people supply you with emails that the original subscriber did not. And that tells you that the original production was not sufficient.
Mr. Salzberg.
We have a similar process to the SEC where our civil investigative demands are not self-executing. We need to go to a court to enforce them as well. In our experience, I think most targets usually comply with our CIDs. If they don't, we have to then make a resource judgment call. Is it worthwhile to pursue an enforcement action, which is pretty lengthy and may not result in us being able to get recourse for consumers quickly, or do we forego the information and try to find the necessary information in another way?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.